Hi everyone, this is Michael, though you may know me from Reddit or other places as Scourgicus, and this is an Elder Scrolls primer. Now today we're going to be talking about character archetypes, and also doing just a very brief introduction to the races and cultures of Tamriel. Now archetypes is one of those big words that I like to use, and in this context it means how do you choose to engage the world. There are generally three: the warrior, the mage, and the thief. Now the warrior is a character who engages the world head on. They often wear heavy armor, use big weapons, and they just charge in and take care of business. A classic example would be Conan the Barbarian. Conan does challenge the archetype in a few ways, but he's really a good way to start thinking about warriors. Second is the mage, and the mage, instead of using brute force, will often think past a problem. They are often skilled in magic and will employ spells, but just as often will use counsel as a way to negotiate difficulties. Classic examples would be Merlin from the Arthurian myths, but also Gandalf from Lord of the Rings. Finally is the thief, and I really like thieves. Thieves are a lot of fun to play. Instead of using brute force or magic, the thief will sneak past the problem, utilizing guile and stealth. And failing that, they tend to be silver-tongued rogues who can talk their way out of anything. There's not a lot of thief characters in classical mythology, though you may be familiar with Garrett from the Thief video game series. He's an excellent example. But also Bilbo Baggins from The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings. He's kind of a classical thief. Now, these archetypes do tend to take on a greater importance in the deeper aspects of Elder Scrolls lore, especially when we start talking about something called the enantiomorph, and we'll talk about that on a different episode. Now, I wanted to do just a very brief talk about Elves and Dwarves, because if you're not familiar with fantasy video games or literature, when I say elf, you might think of Keebler elves or Santa's elves, short guys with pointy hats. And that's really not what we're talking about. In most fantasy literature, not all, but in much of it, the elves are the fae folk or the fairy folk. They're a magical race, and while they may look fairly human, they often have pointy ears or high cheekbones, they are a very magical people, and they are not often safe. They have a very different value system, very different way of looking at life. It's been said in folklore often that to enter the realm of the elves is to enter the realm perilous. So keep that in mind when we start talking about elves. Second is the dwarves. Now, of course, we often think of Snow White and the Seven Dwarves, short guys with beards who rescue damsels in distress. Well, I'm sure that there are dwarves who do that, sure. In classical mythology, and here I'm thinking especially of Norse mythology, but also Tolkien, dwarves do appear fairly human. They are shorter than most humans, and they have great beards. They also live underground. They tend to be miners and craftsmen of beautiful works, and they often have a special connection to the earth. They're pretty cool. I really like dwarves. Now, in the Elder Scrolls, there is a race called dwarves, the Dwemer, and we'll talk a little bit more about them next week. But they're not the same as you might see in Norse mythology, because they're elves. We'll talk more about them later. So that is all I have for you today. I hope that you are enjoying these videos. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments. And this has been an Elder Scrolls primer. Thank you so much for watching.